Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. This is Tony Mary with ETHOSystems. I'm the Vice President of Sales here. And first and foremost, I want to thank you for attending our webinar today, where you'll be seeing the Sage Estimating Suite presented by Darren Pierce, the Estimating Field Manager of Sage Software. So we'll keep it fairly quick and fairly brief for you as far as the introductions go. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Darren, in just one moment. And that way you could go ahead and present your content.
All right, let's go ahead and rock and roll. And everybody, want to resound what Tony said. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join in our presentation. I'm Darren Pierce. I'm with Sage Corporate, in Beaverton office over here. And what we're going to be looking at today is the estimating suite, and really looking at the flexibility, the versatility the solution brings to the table for you. So we'll start off by looking at multiple takeoff methods. How do we populate an estimate? How do we build that estimate? And then we'll jump into digital takeoff and walk you through the flexibility of what that tool will bring to the table for you as well, but also the seamless integration that we built with that solution. Click of a button, we can create the estimate. So we'll show that. And then if we get time, we'll kind of stretch goals, so to speak. The way I like to look at it is we'll look at model estimating where very little information. I want to use our historical and assumptive data, assumptive pricing that we have there. We can build an estimate with a click of a button. And then also take a look at Navisworks integration as well. And I have a couple customers that are actually using this integration as a service for their architects and engineers that they work with. Say, hey, I'll go ahead and create the estimate based upon that. Just send me the Revit file and we'll show you how fast that is too. So let's dive in. I've got an estimate started up here, and let's take a look at the flexibility that we can bring to the table. And we always want to make this a growing experience for companies that start utilizing our system. Well, out of the gate, of course, working with Sage, Timberline, I said it, there you go. I've been working with Sage for about 20 years back in the Timberline days as well, is we work with customers that use the same template over and over and over again. Well, we don't want to get away from doing that if that's your methodology, but taking advantage of our system, you can copy an estimate and clear the quantities. And we've put some security layers into the system that allows you to determine who can edit and who can just view the estimate. I'm not going to do that, but we can copy an estimate over and over and over again. Now, what you'll notice here is we can have multiple estimates available for us on the same pane. We can have 3, 4, 5. I would say probably 10 gets a little bit crowded for it, but let's extract information from past estimates and build an estimate from there. So what I can do is I can take information from an old estimate and move it over into the new estimate. Makes it very easy for you to do. So the one thing that I want to reiterate though is in the same pane here, we can have multiple estimates. So I took all of that information, that detail from that old estimate. A couple things that we look at here is when you look at the available screens, and I've got some coloring in here. Tony and I go way back on the coloring of the spreadsheet. So always want to have a lot of colors, but you don't have to do that. But we've segmented out the labor, the material, the subcontract, equipment, and others. So, but we want to give you multiple views as well. So sometimes the information you're seeing isn't what you want to see. So I may want to go in and change the look, the feel, to just see this information, the total percent. And of course, we want to track everything that you do. So we want to give you an audit trail. When did that hit the spreadsheet? When did that hit the estimate? So when you're looking at that, of course, I built this today. So it's going to put today's time in there. Or maybe you want to look at it from a job cost standpoint. You've been awarded the job. We want to give your back office the capability to very easily take that information, click of a button. Let's build the estimate in the Sage 300 or the Sage 100 accounting systems. Very quick, very easy. For those of you that use the Sage 300, we even give you the capability to take information and build it into extras. So a job within a job. So I'm not sure if any of you use that out there, but giving you the capability to really see this information the way that you want. So you have unlimited methodologies and the details in the columns that you want to see. Now go back to the other one here. The other thing is you might notice there's tabs at the bottom. Well, great. I can see it broken out in that methodology. I can see the columns the way I want, but now I want to see it broken out by another manner. Oh, it could be by floor, by building, by room, by system, by any other manner that you want. And we can move these things around very quickly, very easily too. So a lot of flexibility that is built into the system to make it easy for you to make those changes for you or for the customer, right? So when we look at that, it's a lot of flexibility that brings to the table there. Now, one thing I always like to show is in comparison to Excel, because a lot of our customers come from an Excel environment, and it's an easy entry point, but it does bring its risks along the way. When we look at this, we've got multiple fields here: labor quantity, labor cost per unit, labor productivity, labor amount. If I need to change any of those based upon the scope of the project, I can go in and say, okay, it's going to be 30 hours. You're going to notice the labor cost per unit and the labor productivity are going to make a change. Or if you just want to go in, labor cost per unit, make a change there. That's going to be pretty extreme on the hours, all demo data, of course, right? And the productivity is going to go way down. And of course, that's going to be an extreme price there. Or if we want to manage to our productivity, you know, it's funny, working with customers over the years, and I've been with, like I said, Timberline Sage for about 20 years. They say to me, I go, do you want to track productivity? And they say, well, we don't do it yet, but we want to do it in the future. So it's out there for a lot of those self-performed contractors. Well, if we want to go in and type in 30 square foot per hour, change any other like items, we can. Of course, the hours are going to change, labor cost per unit. And then, of course, we always have those jobs where we have a gut feel and say, well, it's going to be $5,000 to do that. There you go. Lump sum, it's going to highlight that because you didn't take advantage of the calculation you built into the system. But here's the key point. Working with Excel, I do sometimes maybe overwrite a formula, break a link, so on and so forth. We want to keep that risk out of play. We don't want you to have that type of risk available to happen because all the calculation is happening behind the screens. So behind the scenes, should I say, not behind the screens, but behind the scenes. So when you look at that, we're not really touching that formula calculation. It's doing that where we can't. So saves you from making that type of error right there. So let's do something. Let's go ahead and start populating this using our database. Well, when I look at this, we've got multiple methods of takeoff. We'll look at assembly and quick takeoff really fast, and then we'll come back maybe and look at models. Here's our database. And by the way, you can purchase databases. If you don't have a database, you definitely can purchase one or build your own. But what you're looking at is a view into this database. It's broken out in the 16 division that we're used to, but we also have made a transition to the 48 division as well. So we can see this database in any way, shape, or form that you want. I could transition just by a click of a button. I could see it in unit format, or I can see it in, well, job cost summary as well. We can look at it that way. Gives you the flexibility to have a database within a database view. And by the way, you can report on it this way as well. So it makes it very easy for you. And that's what we want to do. So let's do some takeoff real quick. Jump into some concrete here, and let's do a takeoff to the spreadsheet. Now, here's another thing that you look at with our items. You build in a formula, it has variables. These variables are reminders of information sometimes. In this case, you know that you want to put in the length, the width, and the depth. So I can put in those variables and just add it to the estimate very quickly. So as you can see, I'm starting to populate the estimate. I'm going to do a search. Studs, we'll look for wood studs in here. Stud, what my wife used to call me back in the day. Well, still does. Bad joke, that you'll get a lot of them. So when you look at this, you've got multiple items you want to take to the spreadsheet. Easily done, different questions, different variables that you look at here. We can enter in whatever those may be. Let's say it's a 20 foot, 16, it's an exterior wall, right? So we're going to go ahead and take that off, send it to the estimate. Last but not least, we'll look for search our subs because we can of course store those within the database as well. A database is however you want to create it. You could have sub pricing in there where you self-perform. We get into labor, material. And by the way, click a button, we can create the bill of material report for you, send it out to your suppliers, your vendors, whoever you may want to send that to. But I'm going to dive into electrical here and add it to the spreadsheet. As you can see, there's some coloration right there. Another safety net for you to ensure that you put a takeoff quantity to those particular items. That's what we want to do, is we want to protect you from leaving money on the table, so to speak, and missing stuff. So you don't want to get the bid for the wrong reason, right? So when you want to make money. So I put in 4 in there, and of course we can use increments of whatever we want. And last but not least, since I'm on the spreadsheet here, I'll look at one other thing. We can track subcontractors on here as well. What's their pricing versus our pricing? Here's our self-perform. And by the way, that self-perform, that historical pricing that you have in here, it could be a subcontractor's pricing you use as your baseline level, but we'll jump in, subcontractors, we'll look at trades, double click, enter in their unit, and there you go. So we can do a comparison right there. Now, like to show that, but I also like to allude to the fact that we just put a buyout solution out the door as well. Brand new application where if you're getting into the competitive analysis with your vendors and your subcontractors, and you want to have a nice solution to do that within, we've got our buyout application. If you have any questions on that, definitely ask Tony about that. He knows the ins and outs of that solution. So that's one way of getting Takeoff done. And I'm going to look at location really quick and see what we got here. Or maybe I won't. Well, that's going to do something to me. Oh, okay. There you go. Well, it jumped out of there for me. You know, when you go through and you practice these things all day, and then next thing you know, that kind of thing happens to you. So let's go ahead and open this up real quick. So there's my location, area 3. The reason why I wanted to check that is I want to show something different as we get into assembly takeoff. So assemblies, as you would imagine, is multiple items working together to basically create a takeoff. But you're generating, rather than just one item, you're generating multiple items here. So those same variable questions that we put in here, it could be, let's say it's going to be, let's say 30 foot by 10 foot. It's going to be 6 inches deep. And now what we're going to do is generate all of those quantities right there to the spreadsheet. One thing I did want to change here is the location. Let's say location 3, area 3, if you will, and we'll fill down. So could be part of an alternate as well. Of course, alternates are part of the construction industry. We have the capability, we added this within the last couple years as well, where you have that what if scenario and can move that in and out of the estimate, the base bid if you need to. And we can track estimator, lot, and some other things that I've put in here over the periods of times that I've worked with the system. I could generate that to the estimate. And we'll go a little bit deeper though, because really when you look at doing your takeoff, you want the flexibility to enter in more detail. So I could say, well, we'll say 2,000 square foot. What's the depth of gravel, the sand, the concrete? 8 inches is going to be too deep. Now here's something I want to bring up as well, is each one of these at a 500 PSI increment between 3,000 and 7,000 represents an item. I don't want to have to go out and pull an item into this. I want it just to be represented and be able to say, oh, it's going to be 3,000 PSI. Any one of these choices will generate the quantity for that particular item down there. Let's make it easy on you, rather than having to jump in and out of some solution where you're trying to pick off those particular items right there. So now when we look at that, we've got all of those taken off, ready to go. One thing that you look at as well, of course, construction is synonymous with change. What if this takeoff changed? And I said, oh, it's going to be 3,000 PSI instead. We need to add an item on the fly. BTW, as my daughter would say, is we can save this as an assembly. So you have the capability, if you add any item at the bottom there, you have the capability to save that as a future assembly to use over and over and over again. So with that being said, we've made some changes right there. Let's go ahead and hit this button, and let's get back to that. This passes. We didn't do that. Let's hit this. Now we've got an audit trail that gives us, here's the original, here's the reversal, and here's that new pass. So we always want to give you at least some history behind what you've done. And that's just one of the areas that we do that. Send that to the estimate. Now I go into my location, and there's area 3, so on and so forth. So it gives you the capability, the flexibility to add those locations as you go through your takeoff. So that's a quick look, and it's really one of those things where I like to kind of build the foundation up from within the estimating. You get to see the items and the variables and the assemblies and the variables. Well, now let's take that to where we probably will start the whole process, which will be within the digital takeoff solution. Etakeoff is probably one of the most powerful solutions on the market today, and we're lucky enough to work with it and sell this product. And I'm going to walk you through some flexibility of this, and then I'm going to show you the integration that we have with the system. Pretty powerful stuff, and will save you a tremendous amount of time. But first of all, let's get you familiar with the product. Okay. First, you have the view screen right here. And by the way, it's one of those things when I look at this, bigger is better. A bigger monitor is a better situation. 40-inch, okay, that might be a little bit overkill for you, but 30 to 36-inch with a couple side monitors to work with, that's wonderful for these types of products. So as we drill in, first of all, the view screen right here, this is where we do all of our takeoff. Zoom in, zoom out. All I'm using is my scroll wheel on my mouse. If I want to move it around, make you guys kind of dizzy, definitely can do that. So don't want to pass that by. Make sure that you get a scroll wheel with on your mouse as well. Makes it so easy. Over here, you're going to see a couple panels on the sides here. We'll work on some of the stuff that's within those panels. If you hit the drop down, there's a lot of widgets that you can work with in here. I won't touch on all of these. Filtering is one that I'll mention though. So this is a multi-user environment, right? So I can have as many individuals on this one page at one time during any time during the day or night, if you guys are working late hours, that type of thing. And if filtering, I can use that to say, hey, I want to know what Tony did versus what Darren did. So I can see those takeoffs and separate them out very easily. So some key stuff there, filtering in a layer list that we have in there. Over here, you're seeing all of our plan pages, our plan set. One thing that is a differentiator here and is very powerful is that we read the PDFs in their native format. There's no transition or making TIFF files out of them or so on and so forth. So it's no conversion that goes on right there. We can load up 200 pages, 200 PDF pages in literally seconds. The other thing is if you have a PDF that represents multiple pages, we will extract that out for you. So with the click of a button, we'll have all of those pages available. Up above here, when you look at this is our trace library. And I always like to tell the story, well, back in the day when I used to do takeoff, you'd have the engineer rule and you have or a roller wheel, whatever it may be as a measuring device. And then on your other hand, you'd have a crayon marker that you'd sit there and mark off where you've been and where you're going and what you've done. Just make sure you don't double down on anything. Well, if you think about that, these are digital markers for a library of them for you to work with right here. And gives you more than just the old 36 colors that we used to work with, or I did anyway. Up here, you've got a ribbon, Microsoft ribbon. And, every product pretty much has made a move to that at this point. And I'll take a little bit of time to show some functionality within that ribbon right there. So first of all, hover tip. Well, this is going to give you tips on what this particular functionality feature does. It's going to tell you, we want you to be able to learn very quickly. So you can read in what's a shortcut, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a billion videos on a billion. Well, that's a little bit too much, but we've got a lot of videos on the solution that you can walk through and learn the product very quickly. The other thing is when you look at scales, you've got multiple scales, of course, and you can build your own scales, but we have the ones that are already standard in here ready to go, and that would be imperial or metric. Have the capability. The solution will not let you do a takeoff from a page unless you have a scale, unless you say not to scale. And last but not least, you can calibrate between 2 points and check the scale, check the architect scale that they're using there, just to make sure it's correct. Now, the other thing that you look at is multiple windows. And when I think about this, this is where those multiple monitors come into play. I want to be able to see that information as I do takeoff. I take this and put it over on my other monitor. And typically I don't see a laptop being another monitor. It could be, I mean, it works as a monitor, but I like to have a fairly significantly large monitor as my secondary ones as well. So as many windows as you want. And then as we jump into drawing tab here, how many times do you run into a situation where you have multiple scales per page? This can be a detailed scale, as many as you want on any page that you want. So in this case, we've got 6 inches equals a foot. Up here we have a 1/4 inch. Let's move this over, the legend right there. And we have a 1/4 inch equals 1 foot as well. Many scales as you want per page. So one last thing, and then I'll do some quick takeoff, is let's compare. I want to do a comparison. I want to show the differences between 2 pages. Here's the revision. Blue is new, red is old. So I've already sent this takeoff to the estimate. So there's a little foreshadowing I'm going to do right here. I'm going to edit this guy and change that takeoff, and we'll be able to see that a little bit later on. So there we go. Those are some things that I wanted to mention. There's lots of fun stuff to do within the solution that makes your life a lot easier, but we'll get into do some basic takeoff at this point. So I get to the page here, and by the way, there's the digital marker giving me point, length, and perimeter and area. Every time I do a takeoff, it's going to give me that capability. I can do a length. Of course, you just go over here and do a length. Really quick to do. I won't bore you with doing a lot of those. Down here, we have a situation where we're going to do a takeoff of this pool or around this pool. Let's say it was tile or concrete or stamped concrete or something to that effect. Well, when you get into a situation like this, probably most of the time you're going to remove what's inside this pool area. But just so you can see, we got the point, the length, perimeter, and area. Well, I want to back that out. So we can go through the process of backing that out. Now, when you see this round in right there, I'm hitting a shortcut key C to curve. And if you make a mistake, you can always back it out. So if I wanted to, I'd say backspace. It's always nice to have an easy way to get out of an error that we've made, right? So easy to navigate around. And just to give you some future idea of where this solution is going, next iteration, you'll be able to click in the middle of this pool and it will snap to all of that area. That's coming in the near future. But when we look at that, I've backed that area out. We know that area is going to be something. So let's make it concrete for this particular presentation right here. So I look at concrete and I say, okay, that's the one. I'm going to say okay to that. That completes the takeoff. Now you're going to notice something that's happened right there. This is a basic takeoff up here. Area, whatever it may be, length, counts, whatever we do. In this situation, the pool has an E right here. And I always like to talk about safety nets. Make sure that you enter the information that's important for your takeoffs. So with that being said, you've got this E here that alerts you that it needs more information. Well, I pull up this laundry list and you're going to notice something that's probably very similar. Well, gravel, 4 inches in sand, let's say 6 inches in concrete. And here's those choices again. So rather than having to wait until I generate this to the estimate and make changes there, boom, I can just click a button and have it build the estimate for me. So pretty powerful stuff. So with that being said, we can go through and make out the other choices that we need to and say, okay. So if you look at it, what we're doing is giving you the capability to enter variables as you go through the process. So a couple other things that we'll look at here. Let's say that the third floor, we've got some commonalities on each floor that we take off rather than having to take it off multiple times. I'll just place that on there. Now we can use what we call project favorites, and we're ready to go. Now, here's the key to this project favorites is this, and I'm not comparing it to any other solution. Well, I guess I am, but when you look at this, each one of these can be changed. Each one of these particular takeoffs can be changed if you need to. Makes it very powerful for you. Now, as I go down the list here, I'm going to show you one other thing. Let's say if I was a plumber and I had a lot of items that I need to count, landscapers, plumbers, everybody, we may need an auto count scenario. Well, I've already counted this page right here, already gotten these sprinkler heads is what I have them down as, but it could be literally anything. Well, when I come into the plans here, these sprinkler heads may be on multiple floors as you'd expect. Well, rather than going through and doing that one at a time, let's just go through and count as many pages as we need to count. So search this page, and go find all of those for me while I continue to do my takeoff. Now, here's the thing is with, depending upon your computer, how many cores you have, you can do that many searches at one point. So some computers can do 10 or 15, mine can only do 6. But with that being said, now it's gone out and found on these pages all of these guys right here. And it gives me the capability to expand that because I want a review mode just to make sure they're exactly what I'm looking for. I'm good with that. I'll save it. And we've got that counted off. So if I went to that floor right there, we're good to go. So if you think about it, auto count and count as many pages as you want. Okay, taking it to the next extent is, well, we want to build an estimate. Of course we do. Well, I want a system that's going to go out and find all of those particular takeoffs for me. So every time that you do a takeoff, and we can go right back to where those takeoffs are, let's find those. Now I can go and see where that takeoff is right there. So it takes us right back to that particular page. That's awesome. So we've got the capability to do that. Now, the other thing is we have a review. What's been sent? Now, let's not send you over yet. We have a review capability of what's already been sent over into the estimating. And by the way, remember that hallway carpet I had to change? I'll take you back over there real quick. This guy that I had to change, the system is telling me that I've changed that. So one more key thing, and I'm going to use an example of concrete, but notice how these look right now. They don't have a pencil on them. They haven't been changed. Well, turns out we got some information about these foundations or these concrete pads that we took off here. Well, if I want to go through and change every pad that I have on this project, all I have to do is go to this central spot. And let's say that we had that concrete taken off on 4 or 5 different pages. Can you imagine going through and making the change to that? Well, we're just going to do one central area. And I'm going to say, update this. Well, let's update it here. Apply to all of those particular pads right there. What I've just done is every one of those had some variable change. In this case, it was PSI. I've just changed that for every one of those particular takeoffs. So pretty powerful stuff. And if I go in here and refresh, you'll notice every one of these have been changed. So not too bad, not too shabby, right? So when we look at that, let's create the estimate. And then let's go to review and let's look at this guy right here. and I'll want to send, let's see if I can send these guys. Let's just do one, and you can see the difference. Pretty powerful stuff. We've got it was the 3,000, now it's the 5,000 PSI. Let's just update the estimate. Now let's see if I can go ahead and get all of those guys over there at one time real quick. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like we're not going to be able to do that at this point. But anyway, it gives you the capability to see those particular changes by this pencil mark right here, and you're good to go. So let's visit the estimate. Let's take a look at the estimate real quick. Now we get into the estimate right here, and as you would expect, we can combine items. So if we're going to build out our bill of materials, we want to combine all of those like items. But now that we've created that estimate, we're ready to go. And if I've applied certain information, you can have location or other details associated with those particular ones. I didn't do that during this process, but let's see if I had some labeled. So in this case right here, we have all of these labeled. Let's go ahead and collapse all those. So first floor, sprinkler head, so on and so forth. Just to want to let you know that during your process over there, you can apply WBS codes as well. So maybe you want to look at 16, 48 division, or by floor, by room, by system, however you want to do that. Well, it's not just about sending it over to the estimate, although it makes it very fast. It builds the estimate for you, but you may want to make a trip back, and you may want to drill down to that particular takeoff. So it's going to take you right back to that guy. As you can see, we've got the pencil mark, we had the change over there. So we'd want to go through and update all of those particular takeoffs that we have there. So with that being said, a very streamlined process. And there's a lot more functionality that we could show. And if you're interested in taking a look at that, definitely call Tony and he can walk you through those steps and show off the solution even to a greater extent, specific to you, of course. So let's do one more thing then. Depending upon where you are now with the world today, it's a slow, it's kind of interesting because for quite some time I've been talking to customers about BIM, but it's starting to become a reality, for more and more customers working with Revit, working with the architects to an extent where they may be asked to create an estimate for them. Well, what we did was created and I say we, the all empowering we, I had nothing to do with it, but the great minds at Etakeoff did. And they said, okay, let's create an integration with the Navisworks solution. So when I jump over here, and for those of you that jump into the world of CAD and start working with these renderings here, or these models, is you of course know that every object is made up of attributes, and those attributes, and I've kind of got the GoToMeeting thing in the way for me here, those attributes are listed right here. Now, depending upon the architect, they sometimes don't go into the detail that we may need, but we do want to be able to take advantage of whatever they are offering us. So we've got all of these attributes. What we wanted to do was make a connection to them. We created the Etakeoff. This is residing right within Simulate or Manage, depending upon what you use at this point. And we've got all of this information available to us, and we can bring up the bridge. So now there's going to be some common things, or a common theme that you look at here is you see our database available to us. Here's all our assemblies, here's our items available to us. We want to bring the same automation to the table that you're used to. So we want the system to go out and find all of the things that we have mapped. So at this point, we've mapped the basic wall. So within this particular model here, and again, flyaway windows, I mean, it'd be nice to have this during the presentation on a different window so you could see the model while we're doing this. But in your work environment, you would have it on another window. You'd be able to, of course, look at the model. So With that being said, though, now you see all the basic walls in here. Now, just so you can kind of get a feel for this, we wanted to give you the flexibility to, again, use the location as a way to break out the estimate. So the way it flows over, it may be built that builds the estimate in the way you built your database, but we may want to have location or something like that. So we can right click, append these, and I'll just pay ethos in here. And as you can see, it's going to apply that tag to all of that. Well, when we get done, what we want to do is we want to say, let's go ahead and generate this to the estimate. Now, what I will do is I'll go ahead and move it aside a little bit because we want to hide assigned, right? You can show the selected ones, but we can hide assigned as well. So watch what happens to our fun little model in the back right there as we go through this process. So what it's doing is it's taking away those elements, those objects that we're doing there as we see. So when you're done taking off this model, you hit the hide assigned and it's completely gone. You know you've pretty much taken off everything. And if you think about assemblies, that was 69 assemblies right there taken off to the estimate. Well, of course, we can drive over to the estimate really quick. And we can see all of that info. Let's go ahead and move this guy out of the way for a minute. So now we see masonry, finishes, so on and so forth with those particular walls that we did our takeoff on. And the location. So we have some unassigned ones in here, but exterior floor, so on and so forth. So we have the capability to have those for us when we want to break this out in any way, shape, or form that we want as well. It's a location that you're working with. But you always are going to come up to a situation where we need to see information back on the model. All I need to do is right click, drill down to Etakeoff, and it will take us right back to that object that we came from. So if I want to show the selected, there it is. Now we want to take it a little bit further because we showed the comparison between the two within the Etakeoff, digital takeoff 2D world, so to speak. Well, with this being said, now what we want to do is compare the next rendition, the revision of this particular model. So as you receive those updates, those new revisions, we can just say, let's compare this one to that one. And then the bridge is going to do the analytics for you. So kind of show you what we have in mind here. When we look down at this, we can say hide assigned, and it's going to hide a lot of that stuff in there. But you'll notice there's a lot of grayed out walls here, and then there's some bolded walls right here. These have been taken to the estimate. These are waiting to go over into the estimate. So we bring up the bridge again. So now in our review mode that we have here, we have the capability to so refresh it. And we'll just see the changed ones right there. And it's got the ones that I named Ethos as a changed one right there. So apparently I'd sent it over at one other time. So that should be interesting. So what that's going to do for me is create that location that I was hoping it would create in the beginning. But here's a wall that's gone. All of these other guys are ready to be sent over into the estimating system. So with that being said, I don't want to check. You could check through each one of these, but let's just go ahead and update them. And let's apply a note that says, was in my testing stage and wrote this note in here. So let's just keep with this, call it good. Let's just put this right here though. Say okay. Now it's going to go through 29 assemblies, update that back to the estimate. And you can see it kind of fading through all of these over here and making those changes as we go through. So pretty powerful stuff. And we're going to jump over into the estimating. And now we're going to have, of course, those changes here, and we'll have our note that tells us what ones changed for us. So we'll collapse all of these. So now you can see in very bold red colors there. Boy, that if you're too close to the monitor on that one, you probably go, oh, whoa, that's a lot of red. You can, of course, change that. That's a lot of red stuff right there. So when you look at that, you've got these changes that have happened that we can see that iteration, that timeline. And I'll bet you, when I go in here again, there's all of the ones that I meant for ethos to be under. So there we go. So pretty powerful stuff and giving you that capability. And like I said, there are some companies that I work with now that are using this as a service for their upstream partners. Hey, give me that Revit file and I'll continue to create estimates because we're the ones that really have the pricing at our, the updated pricing and the database. So we can offer that as a service. Now, last but not least, and this will just take a few minutes and then we can have a few minutes for any Q&A if we have any. How many times, and I don't know, it used to be I used to laugh at this story, but then I found out it was true. These are the things that happen. Is the bar napkin, the situation where you get very little information. Here you go. I wrote this out last night. I was having a beer with the guys, and we're kind of going through some things. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this so you can see the activity that's going on here. And I drew up this little sketch, and I would like to get a price on this. And I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm just, I'm going to get, well, of course, they will hold us to it right in the end. So we have to be as accurate as possible. And I've heard guys saying that it takes them sometimes weeks to put these things together. Matter of fact, my co-host, Tony, actually worked with a customer on one of these models that fit their business exactly and generated it in 5 minutes. And let me open it just so I don't talk too long on it. And I believe this was even the one that he did. And they focused a lot on building out parking structures. And what you have here is you have about 8 questions that you would develop. Now, underneath that, you have detail as the job progresses that you can make changes to specific to that scope. But in this case right here, you've got 5,500. Well, I could make any changes to these particular items, but we won't worry about that. We'll just generate this guy. So with that being said, I didn't want to open that. I actually wanted to generate it. With that being said, though, what you're going to notice here is rather than going one assembly at a time, much like what we saw in doing the Navisworks takeoff there, boom, all these assemblies, well, same thing. We're going to have the capability to generate all of these assemblies and complete an entire estimate. So when I look at this estimate back here, and back to the story, I believe this is the one that Tony did do, and this is based on means pricing, by the way. He was within a percentage point, and I mean 1 percentage point of what they came up with their price. He did it in roughly 5 to 10 minutes. It took them 2 to 3 weeks. So with that being said, of course, we can go to our totals page, see the breakout, labor, material, so on and so forth. If you are a negotiated company, there's a lot of things we can do with our total page. I'm not going to really touch on that, markups and all sorts of fun things. But if you do negotiate and you say, hey, will you sign the dotted line if we get it down to 9 million, there's a variance. Let's spread that variance, boom, you're done, right? You can go ahead and spread that over the whole estimate or specific areas within the estimate. So that's a pretty quick look at what model estimating can do for you and creating an estimate. And of course, I'd rather look at it like this, if you don't mind. So by the way, we do work with means. If you need to work with means, we have means databases that you can work with that provide that pricing structure. Typically, I find a lot of government contracts require that these days. So with that being said, I think what we'll do is I'll toss it back over to Tony, and as I mentioned, there's a lot of stuff that we can show, but what I'd like you to do is, you have questions, definitely ask them, and then if we need to follow up with a presentation, we definitely can do a one-off specifically tailored to your business needs. So Tony, you out there?
I'm here, buddy.
All righty. Do we have any questions?
So I haven't seen any in the chat box yet. So everybody, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, not mute you all. So AJ, Mike, and Paul, if you have any questions now, great. We'd be happy to answer them. If not, you do see my contact information on your screen right now. So if questions come up, or again, you would like to do a focus demo specific on your industry, specific on your company, I'd be happy to provide that for you. But if I don't see any questions, I'll just say on Darren's story that yes, I was with a client. They had a $54 million parking garage in Las Vegas. It took them 2 weeks to get their rebar number alone, just rebar. Took them 2 weeks, and I did Takeoff through the model in about 6-7 minutes, and over $50+ million. I was less than $5,000 off from them in 5 minutes. So there's a lot of power there, a lot of functionality. Granted, I've worked in Vegas, I know the system, I know the costs, so I was well prepared for that presentation. But just to give you an idea, that's the functionality that's there. What could take weeks or even months could be really, really expedited just through a model. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, Darren. So I thank you today for the presentation, and thank you everybody for attending today. And looks like everybody's going to get a few minutes back in their day, about 12 to be exact. So with that, I'm going to say farewell to everybody and thank you for attending. And again, if you have any questions at all, my contact information is on the screen, as well as my mobile number. That in these day and times, that's typically the best way to get in touch with me. If not, you're free to call our Midwest or Southwest or Rocky Mountain offices, whichever one is closer to you, and they can route you over to me. So thank you again, Mr. Pierce, for the presentation today. I greatly appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, take care. Thanks all.